Yeah. So I think there are two more additions to Geotech group. Can I please request their introduction? Pavitra and
Uh,
Pratik.
Good morning, sir. I'm Pavitra Aula.
Okay. Good
Uh,
morning.
I'm from Telangana. I did my BTech from JNTUH, sir.
Okay, very good.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Then Pratik,
Sir,
is he
he is
there?
not reachable.
He's not reachable. Okay, then leave it. He will join.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Okay. So let us start the lectures today. So yesterday we tried to understand the clay mineralogy. So unfortunately, Pavitra, she was the loser of four classes almost.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so you are the loser of four classes. Yesterday we were talking about the clay minerals. So how to distinguish between different clay minerals? We had an elaborate discussion, and today we are going to discuss with one of the most important thing, that is clay water interaction. Okay, so this is a small introduction about how to distinguish the surface area. This everybody knows. So surface area, when you talk about it, normally we represent either in terms of, in general we have seen representing surface area in terms of the mass, but it can also be represented in terms of the volume. So but mass is preferred because volume we can't able to quantify every time. It is easy to take a particular mass of a soil. So this is simple definition, and this is how one can able to distinguish what is the meaning of the surface area. So this plays a significant role when you talk about the clay mineralogy. So and what role it is going to play, we will discuss in the subsequent slides. So this is what is the figures on surface area of different minerals. So this is a kyanite, this is illite, and this is a montmorillonite. So kyanite has the least surface area because the particles are little bigger, and montmorillonite has the highest surface area because the particles are so small. Okay, so the surface area of kyanite is approximately 10 to 20 meters square per gram, while Lite is 65 to 100 meters square per gram. So everybody well aware of these figures, and this is a montmorillonite mineral structure, that is 2:1 basic unit structure. So the surface area of montmorillonite is 700 to 840 meters square per gram. Okay, so for better illustration, I have also shown the relative sizes of the each particle. As you can see here, this is the size of the kyanite particle, this is the size of the illite, and this is the size of montmorillonite. As you can clearly see here, so the montmorillonite is the smallest particle. The montmorillonite mineral has the smallest particle size as compared with any of the clay minerals. Okay, so that is the fundamental thing, that is the reason its surface area is exhaustively very high, as high as 700 to 800 meters square per gram. So in a given 1 gram of the soil, there are more number of montmorillonite particles than the kyanite particle. So this is what is the physical meaning of your surface area. Okay, so everybody able to hear my audio is clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So today let us try to understand the clay water interaction. You try to ask as many questions as possible, because once you understand this lecture, then much of the geotechnical engineer can be understood, irrespective of whether you are working in a conventional soil mechanics or soil dynamics or rock mechanics or geosynthetics or any waste material. Okay, whatever the kind of the soil particle or the geomaterial it is, if you able to understand clearly the yesterday's lecture and today's lecture, you can able to distinguish how the particles are different and why they behave differently, so depending upon their size or depending upon their other characteristics or attributes. So when you talk about the clay, in fact I have also introduced you, and you people, all of you well aware that, so all clay particles are primarily characterized as negatively charged particles. So negative charge exists on the surface and positive charge exists on the edges. Okay, now everybody also aware of how this negative charge is coming. So a simple answer everybody knows is that's because of the isomorphous substitution. But in addition to that, the charge deficiency is basically caused by the four fundamental parameters. So which includes the isomorphous substitution. So let us try to discuss about what are all these four. So first of all, the charge deficiency is basically attributed to imperfections in the crystal lattice. Imperfections in the crystal lattice. Now again, crystal lattice means you have to go to that seeds, layers, so on and so forth. Try to distinguish between them. Okay, seeds. Now one of the fundamental reasons for charge deficiency or negative charge of the clay particle is isomorphous substitution. Again, I reiterate, isomorphous substitution exclusively occurs at the crystal structure level. So for example, if you look at the tetrahedral, so it is basically composes of one silica is attached to the 4 oxygen, and octahedral where one aluminum is attached to the 6 oxygen atoms. Tetrahedral structure, octahedral structure. So as I told yesterday, if silica is replaced with any other cation, say for example here aluminum Al3 plus in place of the Si4 in tetrahedral structure, or magnesium plus so in place of the aluminum in octahedral structure. So if they are replaced at the crystal structure level, then that particular phenomenon is called as a isomorphous substitution. If the same exchange is occurring on the surface of the particle, then that is called as a cation exchange capacity. So try to distinguish. Okay, you need to have a clear understanding between cation exchange capacity and isomorphous substitution. Now, as is evident from this slide, when there was a replacement of higher valency with the lower valency and vice versa, obviously there is some charge deficiency. For example, here we can see this is 3 plus, this is 4 plus. There is some deficiency, either excessive or leftover. It's always leftover. Okay, so magnesium 2 plus and Al3 plus. So there is unbalanced charge which causes the charge deficiency, resulting in negative charge of the particle. So this is the main source of charge deficiency for montmorillonite. Only minor isomorphous substitution takes place in kyanite, but considerable rate occurs in montmorillonite. So this everybody knows. Next, another charge deficiency arises from the broken edges. Okay, so yesterday we have demonstrated when one tetrahedral is placed or adjacent to the another tetrahedral by sharing a oxygen as a common atom, then we can arrange like a seeds of a tetrahedral or octahedral. Now what if I break this seed? Okay, so on the surface, so there has to be some kind of a charge left over. So this broken edges can either positively or negatively can cause either positive or negative charge deficiency. Okay, so one of the simple illustration I can give you is you might have seen. Suppose if you break either a plastic or in your childhood you might have played with, or even you can also try at your home. If you break any plastic material, the broken edges attract some kind of the either water or dust particle. Okay, for some time, not permanent, for some time. So that is basically due to the this charge deficiency. So when there is a breakage, so here also, suppose if you break anywhere, literally you are breaking the oxygen. So the oxygen is deficient, it's not balanced electrochemically. So therefore this always try to get neutralized by attracting some other ions. So therefore as a whole, the broken edges can cause some kind of a charge deficiency in the particle. Next, the third phenomenon is called as a proton equilibria. Proton equilibria means this is something to do with the change in pH of the media. Okay, so this is called as a pH dependent charges. Now in your 10+2, everybody well aware of, so when H plus concentration increases in a solution, then that particular solution becomes the acidic with less pH. But in the same solution, if there is a dominance of hydroxyl ions, then that becomes the basic solution. Okay, and where the pH is very high. While in the soil particle also, there is a possibility of increase or decrease in the pH, although most of the soils maintain the pH between 6 to 8, almost neutral condition, but you can also see some kind of an extremity. So in some variety of the soils. Okay, so this pH dependence also causes some kind of a charge deficiency on the particles, as you can see here. So kyanite particles are positively charged on their edges when in a lower pH environment, but negatively charged in a high pH. So in the basic environment. Okay, the change in pH also causes some kind of aggravates or reverses the charge deficiency. So here also some equation has been given. So depending upon a replacement of substitution of the hydrogen or the oxygen or the metal ions, there may be a protonation or deprotonation. So this is again purely something to do with the exchange of your neutrons, protons or electrons, all those things. Then another phenomenon which causes the charge deficiency is adsorbed ion charge. So here you can see from this picture. So this is the maybe one soil particle you can say, and these are some kind of cations, so which have been adsorbed onto the surface. While when they adsorb, they can simply be stay on the surface, or they can ingress into the material itself. So as evident from this simple picture, you can see this is called as the inner sphere complex, while this is called as the outer sphere complex. So this also causes some kind of a charge deficiency, where the depending upon the adsorption of the ions, whether they are on the surface or inside the crystal lattice. Okay, so these are the four fundamental phenomena which cause the charge deficiency. So the first one is isomorphous substitution. I repeat, the second one is broken edges, and the third one is protonation when there is a change in the pH, and the last one is adsorbed ion charge. So these four phenomena cause charge deficiency on the clay particles. Okay. So before I go into the clay water interaction, let me ask a couple of questions. Now we have understood what is the clay particle, how the clay particle forms, how the charge deficiency arises on the clay particle. Now why don't the same thing will happen on the sand particle? How the sand particle is different than this one? Anybody can throw a light? How sand particle is different than the clay particle, origin of a clay particle that we have discussed?
Sand is formed by the physical disintegration.
Sand is formed by physical disintegration, correct? But why
sand
don't
particles are larger than
one by one, no problem. Yeah. Yes, please.
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, the sand particles are more larger than the clay, so that the mineral distribution is not uniform.
Mineral distribution is not uniform. Their size is larger.
So the cohesive forces in sand is less.
Cohesive forces in sand is less. Okay.
Yes.
Any other logical explanation? I do not know. See, indirectly we also did discuss about the sand particles. if you refer the yesterday's class, we did discuss about even sand particle also. But you have to logically connect. So any other logical explanations?
Sir, because chemical reactions are involved when the clay particle is formed.
No chemical reactions. No. Chemical, that part we will come to. So let me take you to yesterday's class then. See, this is the basic unit of tetrahedra. This is silica. Okay, what is the formula of, what is the sand basically? It's a quartz.
Quartz mica, made of rock minerals.
No, there is no mica. It is only quartz, SiO2. Okay, so your silica, your quartz is basically SiO2. It is silicon dioxide. Silicon dioxide. Okay. Suppose if I remove this hexagonal one, what left over is only silicon oxide, the above one. This simple tetrahedral. So one silica is attached to the 4 oxygen. 4 oxygen. Okay. Now let us try to understand. Suppose if this Si tetrahedron is left alone. Okay. So the first thing is that there is no isomorphous substitutions in this silica. Okay, when you talk about the quartz. When you talk about the quartz, there is no possibility of this isomorphous substitution. As long as there is no isomorphous substitution, so there was no possibility of arise of the charge deficiencies. Is it clear? Is it clear to everyone? So when you talk about the quartz, it is only this SiO4, SiO2 in fact, silicon dioxide, okay, where there was no possibility of isomorphous substitution. That's why the quartz is so hard. But why it can't hold the water like the clay particle? So this is what you have to understand. The first thing is because of the no charge deficiency, because of the no isomorphous substitution, there is no way there is a possibility of the deficiency, charge deficiency. But let us try to understand. See, there is a oxygen here, there is oxygen here, inside there is a silica. So it is one way it is balanced. It is a balanced chemical composition or chemical component. Now, is this edge oxygen is balanced? Or can this oxygen be shared with any other atom or molecule or ion? Have you understood my question or not? This is silica tetrahedron. This is oxygen. So this silica is holding the 4 oxygen. But if you look at the edge one, this edge one, is this neutral? Is this neutral, or can this be shared by any other atom or any other ion?
Sir, it is neutral.
It is neutral.
Yes, sir.
If it is neutral, then this seat is wrong.
Sir, the upper one is neutral and the lower one is not neutral. Only 2 electrons are shared in lower oxygen.
It's not like that exactly. Say for example, suppose say, can I add water to this one, H2O? Suppose if I add this to H2O, what will happen? This oxygen becomes a common sharing between hydrogens and silica. Is it true?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this oxygen on one side contributing for the quartz formation, and another side it is holding the water. Okay, but here for the charge required for neutralization of or to hold this H2 is so small, it can hold only the couple of hydrogen ions, only couple of hydrogen ions, like 1 layer or 2 layer or 3 layers or so on and so forth. Okay, So this is one of the fundamental reason. Even if you dip your quartz particle into the water, you can see the water only on the surface. The reason being, these oxygen atoms cannot hold large amount of water because their charge deficiency is so low, they can able to hold only one layer of a water or two layers of a water. So that's why on all sand particles, water can be there only on the surface of the particle, only on the surface of the particle. It doesn't cause any kind of a development of the diffused double layer, because the charge is a single oxygen charge is not enough to form the double layer. Moreover, see, when it is holding this H2, there should be enough strength between H2 and oxygen. Okay, so that this water cannot be able to be removed, but that is not the case. So this oxygen is strongly held by the silica and weakly held by the H2. Suppose if you ask which one is easy to remove, it is H2 is easy to remove as compared with the silica, because this is a permanent bonding. So this is a permanent bonding. While this bonding is formed because of at certain temperature and certain pressure. Okay, so that's why this bonding cannot be removed by any means. While the bonding between this oxygen and this H2 is only temporary. Okay, temporary means as long as that particular temperature is maintained. If you do not expose this silica to any temperature, elevated temperature, this water can retain forever. There is no problem, absolutely. Okay, it can retain forever. But how? So when you say evaporation, there is a thermal energy. So because of the thermal energy, the water gets evaporated. So is it clear to everyone now why the sand particles holds only small amount of water? If it is, please tell me. I will explain one more time.
Sir, then water can also be attached at the upper oxygen.
Yeah, everywhere. That's why you can see the water on the surrounding. Na?
Okay, sir.
So if you dip a sand particle in the water, you can't see that water is holding at one particular place. No, there is a water layer surrounding the particle.
So in case of clay, the bonding between water and oxygen is strong.
That I will explain you later. First, try to get clear this part. I'm going to that part only.
Okay, sir.
So I have a couple of questions here. Okay. So what is the force which is holding the H2 with this oxygen? There are different forces we talk about. There is a capillarity, there is a surface tension, there is a diffused double layer, there is electrostatic force. There are so on and so forth. So what is that force which is holding this oxygen with this H2?
Electrostatic.
No, it is the surface tension. Okay. So the force with which this oxygen is holding this H2, that force is called as a surface tension force. So which is quite a weak as compared with the diffused double layer force. So now let us try to understand. So but at this point of time, everyone, it is clear how the sand particle is holding the less amount of water and by what mechanism it is holding the water. Okay. All right or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So now let us go to the clay particle. So this is the clay particle. So this is the this is called as a TEM graph. So in order to prove that the clay particles are negatively charged, what they have done is they have taken the clay particles, they have isolated each individual clay particle. These are the seeds of the clays. We can see on the edges there is a positive cations attached to it. Positive cations attached to it. This clearly demonstrating that the clay particles are negatively charged. This is how the diffused double layer theory has evolved. Okay, this is the fundamental reason for evolution of the diffused double layer. Now this is the clay particle, single clay particle. It is a platy or plaky, whatever it is, and this is how it is represented. The surface is, the edges are positively charged, positive or negative, depending upon charge efficiency, but surface is negatively charged. So this is a common phenomenon. So external or interlayer surfaces are negatively charged in general. This is the external. The edges can positively or negatively charged. Edges can positively or negatively. Different cations balance the charge efficiency. Okay. So here comes. So this is the water. This is your 10+2 only. I don't discuss anything much on this one. So this is H2O. This is called as hydrogen bonding between the two H2O plus H2O. Then this is what exactly happens. So there is a kind of a dissociation happens when you add any salts to the water. Dissociation means segregation. So when they segregate, so for example, if you add salt to the water, that is NaCl, the sodium gets dissociated and chlorine gets dissociated. So the sodium is attached to the water molecule separately, and the chlorine is attached to the water molecule separately. So because of the dissociation, when you add the salt to the water, there is a small change in the color of the solution, and this phenomenon is called as a hydration. That means attaching to the water molecules. Okay, so in case of the clay particle, how this forms? The first thing is that the water molecule, if you look at this picture clearly, so there is a hydrogen, sorry, these are oxygen atoms, these oxygen ions, whatever you call. This is oxygen and this is hydroxyl, and this is tetrahedral sheet and this is octahedral sheet. Okay, I'm just taking the example of kyanite, and the same thing is valid for all types of the clay minerals. You don't need to do anything. So the water molecule locked in the adsorbed layers has different properties compared to that of bulk water. Now let us try to understand what is called as a adsorbed layer and what is called as a free water or bulk water. See, first of all, this is the clay surface which is negatively charged. Now this negative charge always, because this is a electrical force. Okay, this is always electrical force. This electrical force always try to get neutralized by attracting the positive charges. So one of the positive charges is the water molecules. Okay, so when it is attracting the molecules, now remember, when I say attraction, the attraction could be positive and negative. It is a combination. Never ever think that it is only positive or only negative. No, it is the combination of the positive and negative, and the attraction continues until such an extent where the charge on the surface gets neutralized. Okay, where the charge on the surface gets neutralized. Now it is the person, his name is Stern, who first found that on the clay surface there is a one layer of water always exists because of the strong negative charge of the clay particle. So this is called as a monolayer. There is a monolayer of water molecule strongly attached to the clay particle. So this strength is so high. Now here, when I talked about the sand particle, I correlated the attraction to the surface tension force. Here also, such a kind of force is called as a adsorptive force, or it is also called as a electrochemical force. There is the negative electrical charge and the chemical cations which will get attracted. Therefore, it is combinedly called as a electrochemical force. So the attraction of any cations because of the electrochemical force, and that particular phenomenon is called as the adsorption. AD. AB is simply dissolution or simple dissolution. Simple example is when you add salt to water, that is called as a absorption, AB. While if there is a strong electrochemical force exists which attracts the cations or the anions, then that particular phenomenon is called as a adsorption, AD, adsorption. Okay, so first Stern was the first person who was working on these attractions, and he found that there always exists a monolayer of water molecule strongly adhered to the clay surfaces. So this is called as a Stern layer. This is what you read in your soil mechanics. This is called as a Stern layer because he is the first person who found it. Now, what is the significance of this Stern layer? The significance of it is this layer of water cannot be removed even when you apply the thermal energy, meaning thereby even if you keep the clay particles in oven, you can't able to remove this single adsorbed layer of a water because the electrochemical forces dominates the thermal energy. That's why this layer cannot be removed. While all other layers can be removed. Now here it is called as a diffused double layer. Okay, but first one layer is a Stern layer. This is layer number 1. While because of this single layer, is the charge gets neutralized? The answer is no. So therefore what it does, it further attracts the ions from elsewhere from the solution until the entire charge gets neutralized. So the layer which is forming because of or adjacent to the first layer, this layer is called as a second layer. In fact, it's not free water, it is only confined to this one. This is called a second layer. So one layer, two layer, so double. Okay, double layers. But why the term diffuse comes into the picture? Diffuse means, suppose as you have drawn, when anybody is asking, you have drawn something like a curve. Okay, when somebody is asked draw the diffused double layer, you have drawn something like this. What is the meaning of this one? The thickness of the layer keep on decreasing when you are moving away from the particle surface. That process is called as a diffusion. Keep on decreasing, diffusion. Okay, the layer 1, layer 2 and diffusion. So this is why it is called as a diffused double layer. Okay, so until this point there is a charge exist. And behind this point there is no charge. So the water molecules which were attached to the clay particle because of the charge deficiency, this layer is called as a adsorbed layer. While the water which is behind this adsorbed layer is called as a free water, where it can flow because of the gravity or because of the pressure or because of any forces. Okay, so this is called as a free water, freely moving within the pores. This is adsorbed water held by the clay particles. So do you have any question? Anybody has any question?
Sir? Sir, how can we remove adsorbed water?
Removal can be done by different means. So one important point, when you talk about removal of the adsorbed layer, we can remove only the outer layer, not the Stern layer. Always remember, we can't able to remove the Stern layer. Okay, we can only remove the layer of water which is outside the Stern layer. This can be removed by either you put the soil sample in the oven, that is called the thermal energy, or you apply some overburden pressure, and because of this mechanical force it can be removed, but not total, to some extent, or you apply some electrical force like electrokinetics. You can apply any kind of a force to remove of this one. Thermal energy can able to remove maximum adsorbed layer, remaining all forces not that much. Okay, yeah, other questions?
So not even with the help of muffle furnace, can't we remove this water even with the help of muffle furnace and all?
You can do it when you elevate to certain, I think, yeah, see, at 400 degrees centigrade you will remove the structural water. At 400 you can do it. Yeah, it's common phenomenon. That's why when you look at any graph where they talk about the structural water, your structural water is means that stern layer. That can be removed approximately between 350 to 450.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Yeah, any other questions?
Sir, does adsorbed layer also includes double layer, means second layer of the after stern layer?
Yeah, both are same.
Okay.
Both are same.
I thought absorbed layer is only the stern layer first layer of that.
No.
Okay, sir.
It includes both.
Sir, so the plasticity is mainly induced due to this presence of water?
Yes. So your plasticity of clay particle is only because of this adsorbed water. See, now you understood when you just try to recall your plasticity chart. What they are doing, until shrinkage limit, you are filling the pores only.
Yes,
so,
sir.
Now, as you are increasing the thickness of the diffusive double layer, what is happening to the soil mass or soil volume?
Expands.
It is increasing. The increase is not because of the increase in particles. It's because of the increase in the thickness of the diffusive double layer.
Okay, sir.
You got it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Any other question? So after explaining this one, now let us take kyanite, illite and montmorillonite. So which one holds the more water?
Montmorillonite.
Montmorillonite.
Good. What is the reason?
Montmorillonite.
What is the reason?
Because sir, the size of the particle, size of the mineral is very less, so that it can hold a maximum amount of negative charges.
Okay, so it is not a maximum negative charges. Now try to understand. This mechanism is common for all clay minerals. Okay, but the amount of volume of water that can able to hold depends upon how many number of particles are there. Na?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so in montmorillonite for a gram there are more number of particles. So obviously it holds more amount of water. So if you look at the kyanite, so there are less number of particles, therefore less amount of water. Okay, now let me also touch upon a bit about we talk about the contamination. Everyone heard of soil contamination?
Yes, sir.
So what it refers to with respect to diffusive double layer? Because once you are understanding this one, you can easily able to understand how the soil gets contaminated.
Sir, the heavy metals percolating through this adsorb water layer.
Okay, exactly.
The absorbed water will be contaminated.
Okay, see, let us try to understand. The particle surface has a negative charge. Okay, as I told, let's just try to imagine. Initially, I am introducing only water. Okay, only water. Now, instead of the water, if I introduce any other chemical, then what happens? Suppose if I introduce sodium, what happens?
There is chances to get absorbed sodium ion on the surface of the layer.
Exactly. When there was no sodium ions, this particle tried to attract only water molecules. But if there is no water, if there are the water dominantly comprises of the sodium ions, then these water molecules are also replaced by the certain amount of the sodium. It's true. This part is clear.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Suppose if I also introduce the calcium, then again this calcium replaces the sodium. Why? But there is still formation of the diffusive double layer. But when you introduce calcium, this calcium replaces the sodium. Why?
Charge is more.
Because it has two valency.
Exactly. So this is higher valency, this is a lower valency. So it's like a stronger person is coming and throwing out the weaker person. But as a result, what will happen to the thickness of the diffusive double layer?
Decreases.
It decreases. Okay, it decreases. So now you understood. So one of the first factor which varies the thickness of the diffusive double layer. If there is a water, more thickness of the diffusive double layer. If the water is replaced with the sodium, thickness decreases. If it is further replaced with the higher valency, further decreases. If it is further replaced with the lithium, then it is further decreases. Okay. As you increase the valency, there is a decrease in the thickness of the diffusive double layer. Okay.
So that the thickness of this is maximum for the hydrogen.
Obviously.
Sir?
But it can be reverse also. Don't take it in general, because if you look at some papers, somebody might be reporting higher than water also. So the phenomenon can be reversed. No problem.
So also by decreasing the thickness of adsorbed double layer, is the plasticity also going to decrease?
Yeah, it decreases. That's what his fundamental meaning is.
Yes.
Next, any other question? So again, let me ask you another question. So how long this adsorbed layer maintains on a clay particle? Is it a permanent or is it a temporary? How long there exists diffusive double layer on a clay particle? Any justifiable answer?
Sir, it is temporary because if temperature will get increased, then this the second layer of water get released.
Okay. So if the temperature is maintained constant, then as long as such temperature is maintained, there is no change in the thickness of the diffusive double layer. Okay. Now another question is adsorbed layer is influenced by the gravitational force?
So if the electrostatic force is greater than the gravitational force, then it will stay there.
Okay. See here, 1 is on the adsorbed layer, 2 is on the free water. So where there is a gravity?
Free water.
Sir, for free water.
So in the free water. Okay. So because of the gravity effect, this free water keeps on moves within the pores. Or the second case is if you apply any overburden pressure, then this can move under such an external overburden pressure. Okay. So as long as there is no other forces acting on the diffusive double layer, so the double layer retains permanently. Okay. So this is the reason when you do the ground improvement, what you do? We apply the overburden pressure. In case of the surcharge loading, what we do? We apply the surcharge load for what purpose? to remove only the gravitational water. We can't able to remove the adsorbed water. Okay. Suppose if you also want to remove the adsorbed water, then you should not apply the surcharge load. Then what you should apply? If you want to remove the adsorbed water, then what kind of energy you have to apply?
Thermal energy.
Thermal or electrical?
Yes, either you have to apply thermal energy or electrical energy. You got now. This is how different ground improvement techniques have been evolved. So initially only the overburden pressure is applied, which is nothing but your surcharge. But because of that, we could able to remove only the free water. But the adsorbed water is still as it is only. So if you want to remove the adsorbed water and to increase the consolidation, then one has to apply either thermal energy or electrical energy or any other energy which could able to interact with the diffuser double layer, thereby reduce the thickness of the diffuser double layer. So when we say a reduction in the diffuser double layer means the obvious consequence is consolidation or settlement. Consolidation or settlement. More is the reduction in the thickness of the diffuser double layer means more is the settlement. Okay. So I have correlated this with the foundation engineering, ground improvement. So do you want with the liquefaction also or any other phenomenon?
Yes, sir.
The capillarity.
you can touch upon to capillarity. Where the capillarity occurs now?
Said the free water.
Only in the free water. Okay, this is why the capillarity in clay soils will take a large amount of time. So in sand, aperture size is higher, so the capillarity is very fast. But in clay, the aperture size is low as it has to occur only in the free water. So it takes immense amount of a time. Okay. Now let me ask another interesting question. Suppose what happens if I apply an vibration energy to this clay particle? Come on, you should be able to answer. What happens to this clay particle if you apply vibration energy?
There will be some segregation.
Segregation between what?
Liquefaction will occur.
No, liquefaction is not valid for the clay particles. Liquefaction is valid only for the silt.
So there will be segregation between clay particle and water.
Okay. See, when you try to apply the vibration, so this adsorbed water try to get detached. Okay, that means there is a rift between electrochemical forces versus vibration. Is it true? So there is a rift between electrochemical forces versus vibrational force. So if the vibration force is continued for longer time, so these molecules gets come out from the adsorbed layer. So that's why you can see if you ever played in the clay soil, if you try to apply, if you jump up and down, soon it will be converted into what happens if you jump up and down saturated clay? What happens to the state?
Converted into liquid.
Huh? No phenomenon. It will be turned into slurry. We can see any example. Okay, initially there is a clay soil fully saturated, very strong. But you get onto the clay and you try to jump up and down on the surface. After some time, what happens? You will sink. Okay, but water also oozes out. You will sink, water also oozes out, but the clay will be turned into the slurry. Okay. You understood or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But still seems to be not clear to everyone. So try to understand. There is a clay on which every particle is fully saturated. That means all diffuse double layers are formed. Then you try to apply the vibrational energy to it. What happens? Certain fraction of water molecules comes out by overcoming the electrostatic forces, and they will become free. They will try to come out. But at the same time, so since they can't able to come out, there is a disturbance. So they will convert the solid clay into the slurry. I hope I made you clear a lot of fundamentals today. Still a lot of things to be discussed.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, is that the slurry made for the second layer of the diffuse double layer? Due to?
Yeah. The slurry conversion is because of separation of these water molecules from the diffuse double layer. True.
Means the second layer, not the first layer, just not the mono layer.
Mono layer by no means you can able to remove, as I told you, unless you elevate the temperature to 400 degrees centigrade. Whatever the kind of the force you apply, you can't able to remove.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so I will stop it here. You have a class now. So try to compile the doubts and we will discuss in the next class. Okay, there are a lot of things to discuss. I need one more class. On Monday, I can able to finish it up, this clay soil interaction. Is it okay or shall I accelerate a bit?
Sir, it's okay for our understanding.
Yes, sir, it's okay.
So if you want, I can accelerate the speed a bit.
No, sir, it's okay.
No,
Okay.
sir.